Good afternoon, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to TheoryCraft episode 34. Happy Thursday. Good to see everybody. How you guys doing? All right. So, last week's episode was Night Elf Day. We talked about Bearmere, right? You guys remember that? It was an interesting episode. You know, not a ton to take there, of course. The whole idea was, how do we gain an advantage when there really is nothing to do? There's just a stalemate. The map is crept out. We're sitting in our bases. It's a game of chicken to see who breaks upkeep first. How does one gain an advantage? How does one, give up an advantage and end up losing the game? And it was kind of left open-ended a bit. Maybe more of a philosophical episode, if that's a good way to describe it. Maybe that's a bad way to describe it, but you know what I mean. Talking more about tactics, stuff like that. So that was fun. That was interesting. This week's going to be a little bit more straight analysis. I did get some replays from DreamHack Winter that just concluded. All the replays aren't released yet, but my boy Todd hooked me up with some replays. So shout out to Todd for today's episode. I did have something entirely different planned yesterday. Entirely different. And then I got the replays this morning from Todd. So I got them like 3 hours ago. So these replays are pretty new to me. Normally I try to take a bunch of notes and all that stuff. Today, not really any of that. We're just going to go through them. We're going to talk about what I see pretty much at first glance, although I did get a chance to go over them at least once or twice in 16x speed. So we'll talk about them. We'll see what we can learn. We'll see what happened in DreamHack Winter. I will say we have a hard cut at 2 hours today. So 2 hours from now, I got to go. Me and Todd are doing a stream over at Norton Gaming. We're going to do like an ESL wrap-up stream, and we're going to play some 2v2 with each other and stuff like that. So that should be fun. So we got 2 hours today to zoom through these replays. We got 4 replays to go over. And yeah, so it might be a little bit of a, quickly running through. No 40-minute intro. No 6 million pauses, which might be a pleasant surprise for some people that I will not be pausing over and over and over and over again. But still, we're going to hopefully learn something. We're going to analyze some of these replays, and we should have a good, 3-4 episodes from these DreamHack replays, I hope, because there's some quality stuff in there for sure, especially when we get into the Asian region, some of their replays. So the episode today, the title is, and by the way, next week will be Orc week, and then after that we'll have community replay. So the second week in November we'll have that, which is November 11th, Remembrance Day here in Canada. But we will just be remembering the replays that you guys sent to me over the past couple of months, because we haven't done one, community replay review, in a couple of months. So that'll be in 2 weeks, in case you're wondering, 2 weeks. So send in your replays. Today's episode is called A Second Look at HawK versus Starbuck, DreamHack Winter. So, HawK, of course, top human player, been around for a long while. Starbuck, a player that, was an undead main, but he plays a lot of random, and recently he's been playing a lot of Orc. Very, very strong off-race player, though. Very strong at every single race. And these guys have met each other quite a few times. No Orctober. I wish. That's too bad. Too bad we can't have that pun. That'd be good. Yeah, and Starbuck, a player that's challenged a lot of humans recently with his Orc. Most notably, he was able to defeat in, I think, Todd's tag team tournament, which was sort of a tournament where you'd play a 2v2 and 2 1v1s with you and your teammate. He was able to defeat Shimiko in a best-of-5 3-2 with his Orc, which isn't even his main race. Undead is. So he's got a very strong, specifically Orc versus human. And HawK in particular has been struggling against Starbuck in the past. I believe they played each other about 6 times, and HawK's maybe lost 4 of those 6. And HawK, arguably, he has been playing more actively. He's been around longer. Starbuck was a StarCraft 2 player, so he took some time off and then came back, and HawK has sort of never left. So it's a bit weird, HawK being such a top-tier European player, that he's been struggling against Starbuck. But he has been struggling against Starbuck. And in DreamHack Winter, they were in the same group, Group B. They met each other. Spoiler alert, they ended up meeting each other twice in the tournament. Once in the upper part of their group and once in the lower part of their group. The first time they played, HawK lost 2-1. The second time they met each other, HawK was able to win. So today's episode is going to be based on the adjustments that HawK was making throughout the tournament and how he eventually was able to scrape together a victory against a player that he had previously struggled against. That's going to be sort of the narrative arc that we're going for today. Now, just a little note in passing, and you guys might have realized this. This is our 6th episode on Human against Orc, whether it be from the Orc's perspective or the Human's perspective. And there's still some gaps in what have been our Human episodes. We haven't done any episodes on Human versus Undead yet from the Human side of things. We've only done it from the Undead side of things. We've done 2 from the Undead side of things. Now, there's 3 reasons for this. 1, I really like this matchup. I really like Human versus Orc. Say what you will about the balance of it or whatever, but from both sides, I think it's enjoyable to play. I think it's very enjoyable to watch overall. Maybe it's because I have Hitman versus Cruncher bias, but no matter who the players, I really like watching this matchup, and I really like analyzing it. So that's the first reason why we've had so many episodes for this matchup in particular. The second being that even in the past 1 year and a half, 18 months, there's been so many changes to the meta, maybe even 2 years, since the Blizzard Invitational that Grubby was at, if you guys remember, when Orc players, it feels like that was around the time Orc players were just starting to go CORSAIR again. Of course, in the past, it was always Blade Master against Archmage. So this matchup's had a lot of shifts in the meta, even in the past just 6 months as well. We've gone from Farseer Grunts with the Torn Chieftain, Farseer Headhunters, and then they started doing a different Farseer Headhunter build, where they'd still go for that Tier 2 expansion and then still stay on Tier 2 and not go for the Berserkers, and now there's even been a different shift towards the Shadowhunter 2nd style, the Starbuck style. So there's been a lot of different things on the Orc side of things, and on the Human side of things, there's also been quite a few changes, and I won't say they've all been successful from the Human side of things. There's been a lot of attempts at things. The Beastmaster, for instance, we did a whole episode on that. The Beastmaster style that we analyzed Sock doing, not really played too often. We did an episode on fast expanding. Now, Cruncher tried that most recently against Hitman in the grand finals of DreamHack Winter Americas. Didn't work, but he did try it twice. That style is still at least attempted by Human players, but maybe not the best, right? A lot of you guys said that as well, and I definitely agree. Don't think it's the best style of fast expansion, but Humans have tried a lot of different things, not always being successful in that. And Orc, really, every time they've innovated, when Starbuck was innovating with this style, when Lynn was innovating with the original sort of Farseer Headhunter, 6 grunts, or 6 Headhunters, 1 grunt, couple of Shamans, Tier 2 expansion thing, it was always really successful, right? Every time Orc has changed something up, they've done it with a good win rate behind it. So that's sort of been how the matchup's been going. Humans always been on the back foot with trying to catch up. And in the case of HawK against Starbuck, it's kind of been no different. Starbuck has a very distinctive style. It's not a style that we've seen on this show. It's not a style that we've seen in TheoryCraft. What his style is just, I'll do a basic overrun. And if you're unaware of what the standard meta is, I did an episode on that, I think 4 episodes ago. I think that was even our last Orc episode, was an updated look at Farseer Headhunters against Human. What Lynn has been doing most recently against Human. So what the most standard way to play is 4 Headhunters into a Grunt, forcing the expansion with a level 2 Torn Chieftain. You can go see that episode, 2.5 hours, all about that. But what Starbuck is doing, and he's, was the first at least that I saw to do this. There might have been some other Orcs. Maybe he didn't come up with it. Totally acceptable. He's been going Farseer Headhunters, all the same, because it's very strong. And then at Tier 2, he's been going for a Shadowhunter. Not a Torn Chieftain, a Shadowhunter. We'll talk about why that's good. And then he's been going for a quick Tier 3 tech, not something that a lot of Orc players have done ever since Lynn showed us at the regional finals in March that, staying Tier 2 was a lot stronger. He goes Tier 3, goes for Berserkers, and very often he also just doesn't go for Shamans or Walkers. He goes for no sort of Dispel, Disenchant, Purge. He just goes for Raiders and Kodos quite often, although sometimes he goes Walkers as well. So it's a very different style. It's a very counterintuitive style. The Torn Chieftain so often with Orc is your carry, and obviously you really want Dispel against Water Elementals, against Slow, stuff like that. But Starbuck does all these counterintuitive things, but it worked really well. And HawK he seemed to be at least caught off by this and a little bit confused as to what to do against this for quite a while, as was every Human. it looked like when they played Starbuck, because they were so used to the Lin style, again, that we talked about in the last Orc episode. So today's episode is going to be based on, we're going to first watch HawK attempt to deal with it in a couple of different ways. We're going to watch 4 replays. The first 2 are going to be HawK losing. The second 2 are going to be HawK finally winning. And the first 2, he's going to try some very different things. Not historically different, but when you're comparing the 2 strategies against each other, they're almost polar opposites in a way. So he's going to try those and he's going to fail, but slowly but surely he's going to develop, he's going to try different things, even if they're slightly different, and over time he's going to develop a winning strategy, which is something he's been sticking to, and something that other humans have been sticking to as well, to try to defeat this Farseer, Headhunter, Shadowhunter second Tier 3 tech style. That makes sense? So that's going to be the idea of today's episode. We're going to attempt to tell a story here. Must have been flooded in Sydney tonight. No, it wasn't really. It was the weather was very terrible last week, and the power was going out and stuff, but totally fine now. Totally fine now, actually. So I will say, because we are, like I said, a little bit limited on time, and these are 4 replays that are all 20 minutes each, because Starbuck vs. HawK happens to be always long-ish games. So the first 2, we're going to do something a bit different. We're just going to speed through them, because again, they're HawK losing, and we want to talk about what, you know, the humans doing to win here, right? So the first 2 replays, we're just going to zoom through. We're going to watch them at 8 times 16, 32 times speed. I'm just going to point out the important overarching things that we need to know. And we're just going to get through these and just talk about the strategy. And then once we get to replay number 3 and 4, where Starbuck, or HawK rather, finally develops a style that seems to work, then we're going to watch them at our normal pace. And I'll pause and we'll talk about what he's doing exactly. The first 2 are just to show sort of how HawK developed into this throughout the tournament. All these replays are from DreamHack Winner. The first 2 are going to be from the upper part of their group when he lost 2-1. And the second 2 replays, number 3 and 4, are going to be from the bottom part of the group when HawK won 2-0. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Yeah, do it, Happy. Do it, man. For sure. Any questions at all? Does it make sense? Does it make sense what we're going to attempt to do today? And, you know, there might be some things I miss, whatever. Like I said, I haven't watched these replays too much, but I did see the games live. And I do think what HawK does here is pretty good. Hey, Peanut Butter, how you doing, man? I think it's pretty good. These games aren't perfect at all from either player. There's definitely going to be some mistakes from HawK, but it's going to be mostly in execution. I don't think it's necessarily going to be strategical mistakes. And, of course, what we want to talk about on this show is strategy. Can God microwave a burrito so hot he himself cannot eat it? I'll have to think about that one. So that is today's episode. So like I said, we're gonna no one freak out. We're gonna zoom through these first 2 replays, and it's not gonna be the most aesthetically pleasing way to watch a replay, but we're gonna get the idea. At least that's what we're going for. We're just getting the general idea, just the gist of these first 2 games, and we don't want to have to suffer through watching HawK lose 2 games in a row, right? Because we want to see how HawK is able to beat the Headhunters' asses, right? That's the whole idea here. So replay 1 and 2 is going to be a Northern Isles and Concealed Hill, and then replay 3 and 4, what do you know? Northern Isles and Concealed Hill. Okay? So here's replay number 1, HawK against Starbuck, from the upper part of Group B, DreamHack Winner Europe. Here we go. And this was game 1 in their series. So think of it this way. This is the first game they played in this tournament. HawK and Starbuck hadn't played each other in a long time. HawK had previously not had a lot of success against Starbuck's Headhunter, Shadowhunter second style. And this is his first attempt in the tournament at countering this. All right, here we go. So like I said, we're going to zoom through here, keeping an eye on what HawK is doing. So, first thing to point out, does he go 3 farms? Does he go 4 farms? There's a third farm. Militia creep in the green camp, of course. Okay, first thing to point out, 3 farms with tower. Starbuck comes in for the harass. He's, of course, going Farseer Headhunters back at home. All standard for him. Hello, AKM. HawK defends the harass without taking too much damage. And actually, worth noting, very important, HawK skipped the tower. He got it, but he did not upgrade it. He teched before upgrading it. This means he has to defend his peasants because he doesn't have an arcane tower to defend them just yet. That means he has to stay close by his base. Important point. Wolves continue to harass. He has to call militia. Now he's going to pressure the headhunters. Continuing to defend his base. Has to use water elementals. Has to use more militia. The tower is now being upgraded. This has already costed HawK quite a bit of lumber, and importantly also, it's cost him a lot of headhunter HP, or footman HP, rather. The headhunters have done a lot of damage to him. Look how much damage the footmen have taken, right? So much. Very important, very important. HawK goes for 5 footmen into defend. This is something he's going to do every game. 5 footmen into defend. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's absolutely fine. He's going to go for a blacksmith, indicating rifles, getting the shot because he needs to. Look at all of his footmen. Wait, was this 4 footmen into defend? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is the one game he actually does not go 5. He goes 4 into defense. So this is something he's going to change also later on. Worth noting. So worth saying, this has not been a good early game for HawK. Loses a couple of militia there. Mountain King on the way. Blacksmith about to finish for Rifle Caster. But certainly not the best early game. Behind this, Starbuck, like I said, Shadowhunter. Tier 3 tech. He'll eventually get a Bestiary.
A player's forces are under
And now HawK can finally leave his base. But he's level 1. He's lost peasants. He's lost footmen. And now he's getting his Arcane Sanctum. Mountain King comes out. HawK continues creeping just to get level 2 at this point. He's going to go for some riflemen. Creeps a little bit aggressively. This is something he has the luxury of doing because he has to defend, which is quite nice. But Starbuck also gets a big camp with Hex. Now, one thing that you guys might be questioning, what's the point of the Shadowhunter? Of course, when you hex footmen that have defend, they no longer have defend, so the headhunters can actually kill the defended footmen, which in turn allows Starbuck to go tier 3 greedily, because if not, HawK just masses footmen while Starbuck tries to go tier 3 and just pressures him, and he loses every headhunter because he has no way of defending them because he just has piercing damage. This allows, the Shadowhunter allows him to deal with the footmen, which allows him in turn to get an early, greedy tier 3. That's the whole idea of the strategy.
a player's forces are under attack.
Now this looks like a pretty standard rifle caster game from HawK. He's trying to get Mountain King level 3, Archmage level 3. He's getting a strong army. But generally we're doing this in hopes of pressuring an expansion, right? So let's see, what does HawK do when he finally hits Mountain King level 3? What does he do? It's a greater mana. And now what does he do? He's got no expansion to pressure. He could counter expand. He could do a few things. But what is HawK going to do? Remember, this is the first game in the tournament after losing to Starbuck previously in other tournaments.
A town is under siege.
And this is HawK's solution. He's going to call the boys, and he's going for a what's now a 51 supply push with Rifle Caster. So this is a very similar timing. Note, 9.5 minutes. Normally, if you remember the very first episode, the Rifle Caster push with Mountain King level 3, about the earliest you can do it is 8 minutes and 45 seconds, 8.5 minutes. So this is a pretty good timing if he were up against a fast expansion, a tier 2 expansion. But in this case, HawK is going to do the same timing, just into the main base of Starbuck. By 51 supply, because he's just breaking right away in hopes of winning the game with this push. So he calls the boys, and let's ask the question. So this is his timing. He clearly wants to win the game off of this push or do some serious damage. Is this a good timing? Well, Starbuck is got everything on tier 3. He's got a heal scroll. He's got level 3 Shadowhunter with Orb. His Berserker's just hit. He's got a Kodo. This timing might not be the best. It's almost an anti-timing in a way. All the tier 3 things that Starbuck wants, he's already got because he was able to go tier 3 so quickly because the Shadowhunter gave him map control to do so. But HawK, as we've established, can't really... What's up, Headless? What's up, Saul Goodman? Starbuck can really defend quite easily, and HawK, he's not much stronger than Starbuck currently, despite staying on tier 2 and going for a very big push right now with a greater mana, with a heal scroll. So this isn't actually that good of a timing, despite being still a clean timing. He got level 3 Mountain King quite early. He macroed up to 50 supply quite early. He's already got +1. He's got a heal scroll. On paper, HawK's got everything that he's supposed to have, but still the timing just isn't quite working here against Starbuck. But it might go all right. Let's see how it goes. Note, if this does not work, HawK is just down a full tech. Just down a full tech. Not too bad, though, still. Not too bad. Still not bad, though, right? Still not bad. But the Torn Chieftain comes back out, and HawK is forced to Town Portal, and now we're just down an entire tech. Right? Now we're just down an entire tech. And what HawK can do is maybe expand, but what do you know? He called all the boys. Look at his lumber. 13 lumber. And Starbuck, yes, he took some losses, but the supply is even. His lumber's fine. And now he can creep up a third hero. He didn't even use his heal scroll. And he could just continue to produce on tier 3. And now HawK is at a pretty big disadvantage because they traded essentially 1 for 1. But he's down a tech and he's got no lumber. Right? So that's how HawK lost game 1. Now the game goes on for about another 6-7 minutes. HawK kills some units, takes some fights, but he's forced to stay on tier 2. And ends up losing because of a tech disadvantage in the long run. So that's replay number 1. That was the first game they played. HawK goes for a very strong timing, saying, if you're going to go tier 3 so greedily, I'm just going to call the boys and go for a big rifle caster push. But the timing kind of just fundamentally does not work against the strategy of Starbuck, just because of how the timings line up. HawK could push no earlier than that, but still unable to break the main base, especially because there's already fortified as well. Very difficult to do much against fortified. You can't actually push into the base and kill the burrows. Also disadvantage because he's playing human. Well, this is human day, so I'll allow that. So what can HawK do? Well, into game number 2 on Autumn Leaves. Note Starbuck's now up 1-0. They play on Autumn Leaves. We're not going to watch this replay. We're going to watch replay number 3, but I'll just tell you what happened in Autumn Leaves. Now, the adjustments that HawK makes this game is, first of all, he goes for a tower earlier so that he doesn't take so much damage in the early game. Because remember, he lost 2 peasants, he lost all the health, he lost all the mana on his Archmage, he was stuck on level 1. The early game was not good for HawK. So he gets an earlier Arcane to help with the early game, but delaying his tech. Right? And then when HawK reaches tier 2, what does he do? He doesn't go Rifle Caster. He doesn't go for a big all-in. He instead goes tier 3 right away. He goes tier 3 right away with a single Arcane Sanctum, lots of defend footies, and eventually he goes into Knights with Inner Fire Priests and goes for Tri-Hero. Now this is kind of interesting because both players are on one base. So now HawK has sort of said, okay, I can't break you with a tier 2 army, so let me equalize the tech and try to just get an army that counters yours. Let me just get Knights against your Berserkers. That should be pretty good on paper. And if I don't win the fight with, like, say, a strong tier 3 timing, I'm not at a tech disadvantage. And I'm not at a huge lumber disadvantage because I don't have to call the boys to go for a big push, stuff like that. I also have a third hero just like you, so if we get into a creeping war, which if a creeping war happened on Northern Isles, Starbuck would have had a Torn Chieftain to get level 3 as well, whereas HawK would have just had an Archmage and a Mountain King, probably on level 4 apiece, which of course isn't as good as 3/3/3 Tri-Hero Orc, as we all know. So now that HawK's gone for tier 3, he's also got a Paladin to creep up. Excellent, right? And, what do you know? HawK manages to win game 2 with this strategy. But there's some flaws. There's some flaws to this strategy, and those are going to be exposed in the second replay we're going to zoom through. So now it's 1-1 in the series. HawK tried something game 1, a very aggressive style, didn't work. He tried a much more passive style, equalizing the tech, in replay 2, and it did work. Wow, it did work. So now, of course, HawK is going to try the same thing in game 3. My strategy game 1 didn't work. I won't do that anymore. My strategy game 2 worked. Of course, I'm going to keep trying it. So let's see why it doesn't work for HawK in game number 3 in this series, replay number 2. Here we go, Concealed Hill. It's incredible. It's incredible. Here we go. So here's Starbuck. Again, Starbuck's doing the same build order every single game. Just sometimes he goes for a Tauren Totem at tier 2, sometimes he goes for a Bestiary. Other than that, everything is the same from Starbuck pretty much across the board throughout this series. Right? That's just important to know. Okay, now let's see what HawK does. This is game number 3. He's had 2 games to make adjustments. Preview right away. What do you know? Arcane Tower doesn't want to take a ton of damage from the harass, just like he did on the last game on Autumn Leaves that we didn't see. Did you miss much? You missed about 26 minutes and 11 seconds, Hate Team. Note, this Arcane Tower is going to be up pretty soon, so the damage won't be huge. Starbuck got 1 Peasant. But the Arcane's up, so the main base is pretty safe, which means the Footmen don't have to commit in health to defend the main base. Already a nice adjustment to the early game for HawK.
Players' forces are under attack.
One thing that HawK has been doing also throughout this series, and he's going to do explicitly this game, he's really trying to get level 3 on the Archmage so that he can maybe punish the burrows around tier 2 so that Starbuck, you know, obviously, if he goes tier 3 right away, he can't afford reinforced defenses. He's going to get spiked barricades to deal with it. But he's trying to get level 3 Archmage to pressure at tier 2. That's something HawK has been going for. But in doing so, again, he commits health on the Footmen. And he loses not 1 there, but 2. He actually lost 2 Footmen there.
Forces are under attack.
There's the second corpse. 1, 2. Lost 2 Footmen for that. And this was all in an attempt to get level 3 Archmage, which he will be successful in doing so. But he loses some Footmen. Still Blacksmith, Lumber Mill behind this. He gets level 3 Archmage. And he goes into the main base with his 3 Footmen. But there's already spiked barricades. And he's already getting reinforced defenses, as he did in the first and second game. And what do you know? There's a Shadow Hunter to deal with any number of defend Footmen. So this strategy from Starbuck is almost designed to ensure this sort of pressure won't do much. The Shadow Hunter, the spiked barricades, the reinforced defenses are all designed to shut down a level 3 Archmage and defend Footmen. So HawK is still sort of playing into the hands of Starbuck here, showing that maybe he doesn't fully understand the strengths and weaknesses of this strategy. And now HawK loses 4 Footmen. He doesn't really do much other than cancel the shop. And yes, he's level 3 Archmage, but level 3 Archmage with no Footmen left. Maybe 1. No, he even lost this Footman over here, so he's lost every Footman. Okay, he's got 1 left. But he's going tier 3 again. He's going tier 3 again. So there's been a couple of mistakes. The first game, HawK didn't really get the timing of how things lined up, so he went for a big push. It didn't work. The second game now, HawK sort of understands that his push won't work, so he's going for tier 3. No, tier 3. No, tier 3. Pretty much equal techs, so that HawK won't be in a disadvantage by staying tier 2 by default. But this game, HawK goes for some sort of pressure with level 3 Archmage and Defend Footman, which, of course, does not work if we understand the strengths and timings of the strategy we're up against when the Shadow Hunter comes out. The fact that there's spiked barricades and reinforced defenses. This sort of pressure just simply doesn't really work against Starbuck's strategy because it's explicitly designed to defend this sort of pressure. So the whole point of getting level 3 Archmage, the whole point of being aggressive on the map, doesn't really do much, at least in damage, to Starbuck. but at least won't be at a tech disadvantage. But now there's only one footman. This is the strength of headhunters. You have these tier 1 units that eventually become tier 3 units. Footmen don't turn into knights. So it takes a while for human tier 3 to get online, because he wants to go for inner fire knights. But you have to wait literally until you're tier 3 to be able to get both inner fire and knights. So now look at HawK's army. 2 heroes. Look at Starbuck's army. Plenty to creep with. And he's going for a bestiary this game as well. No Tauren Totem. And now HawK's going to struggle to creep a bit, but it's going to be very difficult. He's got to call the boys, and of course this is a very lumber-rich strategy. You need to get inner fire, you need to get attack armor upgrades, you need to get animal war training, you need a 3rd hero. So you need lots of lumber for the strategy, but now he's forced to call the boys for a long time just to creep the Mountain King up because all the footmen are dead. And no map control either, which allows Starbuck to get the red camp. But at least we're going to be even on tech. At least we're going to have an army that can scale into the late game that doesn't force us to push and try to all in. It doesn't force us to all in. But because knights take so long to come out, our first knight's only now on the way. Our second priest is only now on the way, meaning inner fire is a long ways away. Look, we don't even... Oh, we do have a death, but it's going to take a while for an inner fire. This allows Starbuck to get a tiny Great Hall immediately on tier 3 because it's taking us so long to get online. Look, if we pushed across the map right now, we would not win the fight. We would be fighting into a Tauren Chieftain, Berserkers would be probably soon to finish, and we'd have one knight. So HawK could counter-expand, but again, he would have the weaker army if Starbuck just pushed. Now, what can knights not do? They can't attack up. So knights are actually quite bad against Zeppelin drop harass. The only anti-air that Starbuck or that HawK has is the Archmage itself. So the Zeppelin's actually quite hard to deal with without, say, like a workshop for a flying machine. It's very hard to deal with. This Archmage is the only anti-air. He could buy an orb maybe, but he needs a water elemental. He needs the Archmage. And behind this tiny Great Hall, the knights are split harassing, which is quite nice, but the Kodo can go over there to deal with it. So this is a weakness of the strategy of HawK. There's a couple weaknesses. One is it allows this tiny Great Hall because our army isn't online for such a long time. The second is it allows the Zeppelin drop harass because we just don't have a strong way of dealing with it simply. Very nice speed scroll usage by Starbuck as well. And these knights were very nicely done by HawK, but still just a Kodo simply deals with it. And we couldn't counter-expand because, again, our army wasn't online for a long time. What's up, Dondelar? How you doing, man? So there's some flaws in the strategy. Although it solves a couple of problems that we had in Game 1 and tunes a couple things up in the early game, there's still fundamental flaws that do not counter the strategy. Expansion's still mining. And simply 57 against 42 supply. HawK is forced in a way to all in, but Starbuck just goes right back to laming. And that is how HawK lost Game 3. That's how HawK lost Game 3. So HawK goes to the lower bracket now, losing 1-2 against Starbuck. kind of finding a solution, but Starbuck eventually in Game 3 exploiting some flaws. The tiny Great Hall timing, the Zeppelin drop harass, extremely good flaws to exploit for Starbuck. It was very well done by him in finding those flaws. You have some nice handwriting? Yeah, I know, right? It's called Architect's Daughter font, if you're wondering. So Starbuck makes some nice adjustments, abuses the flaws in HawK's strategy. So now HawK has some time. He's in the lower bracket. He doesn't have to face his opponent till the next day. He wins against his opponent. I forget exactly who. He moves on to the next round. Starbuck loses to his opponent, drops down. So they have about a couple of days in between finally meeting again in the lower part of Group B for DreamHack Winter Europe. And they play each other again. HawK has time. He can study the replays. Starbuck only does this strategy, pretty much. I wouldn't want it. That's kind of talking down to him in a way that he only does this strategy. He's had a lot of success with this strategy, and he's continued to do this strategy pretty much in every game that he's played against human for the past few months. So HawK is pretty sure Starbuck is going to do this same sort of style. And he's also pretty sure that Starbuck has the answer to the two strategies that he did in this series. Yeah, I think a flying machine would be a good response to it, Dondolare, but it is, of course, like you pointed out, it's very, very expensive. Obviously, HawK would have profited had he just got a flying machine on Concealed Hill because he took so much damage. But it's tough, and, you know, the lumber's so short. You need to power build that workshop most likely. So it does become very lumber heavy, which one base Inner Fire Knights is already quite lumber heavy. Okay, so this leads us into the actual games we're going to analyze today. The first replay, do we want to do it in order, or do we want to do the better replay first? Do we want to do it in order? I suppose we could do it in order. We'll do... The order of games was Northern Isles and Concealed Hill. I suppose we could do Northern Isles first. Again, there's going to be some flaws in these games from both players. HawK is going to make some mistakes. HawK's going to make some mistakes, but, you know, that's all right. That's all right. Because, again, we're talking about the overarching strategy. We're talking about the development of this strategy through HawK, learning and improving over time. So what adjustments has HawK made thus far? Well, he's trying to equalize the tech by going tier 3. He's getting an earlier Arcane Tower so that he doesn't take a ton of damage and a ton of Footman life damage in the early game. He's gone now 5 Footmen instead of 4, which is something that he's probably done in the past. And there's going to be a couple more changes that HawK now does, which are Chef's Kiss, which are very good, which are going to lead him to success. And we'll try to point out these details, and we'll try to understand why this strategy actually works. Now, I will say, the strategy is probably not going to always work. I don't think this is a counter to Starbuck's strategy. See, I think this is just a good playable strategy for HawK against Starbuck. I don't think if you do this, you just have a build order win right away, but I think it's good. I think it's going to have a good success rate, at least 50-50 at this point. Much more 50-50 than the other two styles we just saw. It's important. This isn't a free win, right? There aren't a lot of those in Warcraft, unfortunately. There's not a lot of those. So let's look at a couple of days later now. HawK had some time to study the replays. Let's see what he does differently. Here we go. So here's HawK in the bottom left, Starbuck in the upper right. Again, it's going to be a very similar strategy from Starbuck. He's going to go Farseer Headhunter, 2 Burrow Tech. He's going to get 6 Headhunters, go tier 3, get a Shadowhunter second, Torn Chieftain third. He's going to go into a Bestiary for Kodos and Raiders. If he has the opportunity, he's going to get a tiny Great Hall. If he has the opportunity, he's going to Zeppelin drop Harass. All that stuff. Right? It's going to be the same strat. From HawK, he's going to make some adjustments. It's not anything crazy. We're not going to see a paladin first. We're not going to see a blood mage first. Oh yeah, I already pointed out that sometimes he goes for a torn totem, sometimes he goes for a bestiary. I said that on a concealed hill. Most often he goes for a bestiary though. Most often. So, Archmage, all is standard in the world. Like I said, here's Farseer Headhunters. We all know it. We all love it. Third farm. Again, green camp. That's what we crept in the first game as well that we watched. Nothing new there. And tower. Right? We pointed out why this is important. We don't want to take a ton of damage on our footmen. We don't want to use all our mana on our Archmage. We don't want to have a low lumber. This is all fundamental human versus orc, right? A tower is important. Because, you know, what's not too important is having a super early tier 2 because, again, the timing doesn't work if we were to go to Riflecaster. So in the past, people would sort of skip the tower entirely. They wouldn't even build the scout tower, and they would only go for 2 farms. Why would they do that? So that they can get tier 2 earlier, so they can get a Mountain King crept up earlier, so that they can hit a strong timing earlier against an expansion. But HawK doesn't need to do that because Starbuck goes for tier 3. He also delays his tech with Headhunters, right? We don't need to worry about having a super early tier 2 tech. What we need to worry about is being safe. Something slightly different Starbuck's doing is he's creeping level 2, but still we would have been safe against Harass because we have a tower. Remember, previously in the games, HawK was always prioritizing getting level 3 Archmage ASAP, and he's not going to do that this game. He's instead going to be aggressive, which in fact is the best defense, isn't it? We've talked about this. Remember the Death Knight expansion against human episode we did. The best defense is offense, and that's what HawK is doing here. He's defending his base from the Headhunters, from the Farseer, from the Wolves, via just being a little bit aggressive, threatening to take creep camps, threatening to maybe cancel the shop. But he's not going to commit in. That would be a fool's errand until he has defend online. Oh, by the way, it is actually 4 footmen into defend. Like I said, didn't watch these replays a million times, so don't have all the details nailed down. But okay, 4 footmen into defend. He'll probably get a 5th footman afterwards, I would imagine. Note, HawK's just running around. He's taken some damage in the process, but look at the footman health. Remember back to game 1, he had all of his, he was spawned up here. He had all of his footmen in the back. He had to build a shop early. His Archmage is still low this game, but all the footmen were pretty much red health game 1. That was because he had to sit in his base and defend the peasants because he didn't have the tower. And that's also because he sat on his side of the map, allowing Starbuck to just pressure. But now with the positioning HawK has on the map, he's able to keep his footmen safe because he can just run in circles around the map, threatening to run to the main base, threatening to take creep caps. Now defend is online. Should be pretty close at least. Yeah, it is. And he gets a 5th footman as well. And still blacksmith, still shop, still another farm, all the stuff that we need in a standard game. Nothing crazy, right?
A player's forces are under attack.
And now HawK has pretty much kept all of his footmen quite healthy, up to the point where his shop is online, then he can heal them all up quite easily. And he hasn't allowed Starbuck to creep a ton. He is kind of now, but this often happens. And importantly, he took 0 economic damage the entire early game. 0 economic damage. Now, first Rifleman comes out. Ooh. What is he doing the same strategy? These replays up on War 3 info. They will be probably in the next few days. once DreamHack releases their replay pack. Now, we see a first rifleman coming out. This looks like game 1 that we watched, right? Is he going for the timing that we already established kind of doesn't work? And it would work even less here. Why? Because our tech was later, remember. We built a tower. Our tech is later. But he's going for rifles, nevertheless. Now, the difference this game is HawK has taken much less damage. He hasn't lost any footmen. His Archmage is healthy. His Archmage has some mana. Yes, his Archmage is only level 2, but he's got all the footmen left over. And he's getting rifles as well. So he's going to have a much stronger army here. Because he's played so much safer, not prioritizing the experience on his Archmage. Nice little creep jack. This is kind of a telegraphed creep from Starbuck, but he gets away with it. That's kind of how this map works a lot of the time. If you have to go back and heal as the human, you kind of have to give up one of these 2 camps. But Defend is online, and the Shadowhunter's not out yet, so HawK has a little bit of time to play with. And Mount King on the way. More rifles are going to come out eventually. And eventually we'll have an Arcane Sanctum as well, but our gold's a bit short because 5 footmen, because Defend, because an early shop, because we used the scroll already to heal up. So our gold's a little bit low. But don't fear. There's the Arcane Sanctum. Second rifle will soon be on the way. And HawK knows there's no way I can do anything. Like, running into the main base, yeah, maybe I could kill some burrows, whatever. Maybe I could cancel a bestiary if I was a little bit earlier, sure, but he's only level 2. And he, of course, knows the Shadowhunter's out. If he runs across the map, the footmen with Defend are no longer so scary, and the riflemen probably dead to Hex. So HawK knows now's the time to be a little bit more passive. Now is not the time to be aggressive. I need to wait to have a couple of riflemen. I need to wait to have priests. And the cool thing about going rifleman here and not pressuring is you can actually creep quite quickly. Because just like headhunters creep quickly, riflemen for the same reason. Good piercing damage.
A player's forces are
so we can
attack.
almost, not quite, keep up in creeping speed with the orc. And we're doing so without just losing a bunch for being aggressive. Sanctum's up. Farm, a little bit forgotten about. Like I said, won't be a perfect game. There's level 3 Archmage. And now all of a sudden we have a Mountain King. We're about to have a second rifle, or a rifle with range. Sure, HawK, that's fine. And we're soon going to have our first priest. Could have already had our first priest, right? All of a sudden our army's a lot stronger.
A player's forces are under attack.
Of course, eventually we're going to be down a tech. But for now, we're going to have kind of a strong army. We got level 3 Archmage now. So we have a short timing when we have a couple of riflemen, when we have our Mountain King. Of course, you can't hex and kill all these footmen. So our army is actually, for the time being, stronger than Starbuck's because we have Bolt, we have riflemen soon to have range, and we should have a priest already. We should have a second priest on the way. So HawK has found a timing in which he's stronger. He's not going to be stronger for long, though. Because remember, Tier 3 is going to kick in, TC is going to come out about a minute later, and Berserker Form is going to be done about a minute after that. So we got about a minute to play with, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, where we actually have the stronger army. Incredible. But not forever. But with this minute, we can pressure, we can take creep camps aggressively, we can maybe win some exchanges, and behind this, this is new. So we're going for a Tier 3 tech. Yes, we're going to be behind our Tier 3 tech for about 2 minutes, but remember, we have a minute to play with right now. So we have until about our tech is maybe 60% done, where we, in fact, on paper, let's say, we can always get out microed, have the stronger army. Right? So now HawK has sort of made up for the disadvantages that we saw in Concealed Hill, where I think HawK's a little bit stronger now just because of food. Well, he's got more food because he stayed on Tier 2 longer. right? So he's made up for the disadvantage that he had by going tier 3, because remember, the Orcs' army is just stronger overall because they go for Headhunters, which turn into Berserkers. And like we said at Concealed Hill, Footmen don't turn into Knights. You need tier 3 for Knights. So when HawK was immediately going tier 3, yes, he was keeping up in the tech, but he wasn't actually having equal army while keeping up in the tech, because Starbuck can just keep building Headhunters, and we don't want to keep building Footmen. They are useless at tier 3. So now HawK has done something in which he's managed to keep up army. He's, in fact, got a little bit ahead in army, and all he's given up for this is about maybe, say, a minute or so of tech. So he's not going to be fully ahead with every advantage, but he's done the best balancing act he could to have the strongest possible army and also not just lose later on with this rifle army into a later tier 3 tech. Very cool.
Players' forces are under
and again, we still have some time to play with. Kills the ward right away, forces Scroll the Beast. But a mistake happens, as they do. Gets forced into Town Portaling. If he hadn't been forced to Town Portal, probably would have killed both these, probably would have killed the Kodo, right? Maybe would have forced the heal scroll, but a mistake was made. Nevertheless, we don't have to worry because we have rifles. In fact, 3 rifles. We can almost keep up in creeping speed. We can almost keep up in creeping speed. And soon enough, our tier 3 is going to be online. And what do we go for at tier 3? Well, we can get a Paladin, we can get Orb, we can get Staff, we can get Inner Fire. We can even get Knights if we wanted to. Although HawK's not going to get Knights. He's going to stay on Inner Fire Rifles. But similar to what Berserkers are, from Headhunters to Berserkers, from Rifles to Inner Fire Rifles, they're also a tier 3 unit, right? They have Inner Fire. They have tier 3 upgrades. You know, +3 attack, for instance. They have a Paladin behind them. They have Paladin Aura behind them. They have Staff. They have Orb of Fire to help them. Right? So, you know, you could say these are like Berserkers. They're tier 3, tier 1 units. Mountain King keeps up in experience, gets level 3. And HawK maybe shouldn't be fighting right now, right? He's still waiting for his tier 3. Starbuck has reached tier 3. He's got his TC. He's going to have his Orb soon. He's got his Berserkers online. But you could still say HawK maybe has a stronger army for a little bit. Before maybe the Orb is out. Before maybe like a second Kodo or a Raider is out. But still, you could say that this maybe is a little bit of a, what we like to call an anti-timing. But still, I think there's a good shot that HawK could win this fight. But that happens. And looking at the army all of a sudden now, it doesn't look much stronger, right? So you could say this is probably a mistake. HawK should have probably realized that Starbuck's army would have been online. This was his timing to fight. This is his timing to maybe just creep a red. Maybe creep this and then contest this red once he has Inner Fire. But he needs to wait. His Paladin's not out yet. His Inner Fire is not even started yet. He doesn't have even +2 attack yet. So HawK needed about 1 more minute before he was actually ready to take this fight. But he took it early. So again, another slight mistake from HawK.
A town is under forces are under attack.
A mistake which almost could have cost him the game. But still, everything else was looking pretty good, right? Worth noting, he sent some footmen into the main base with Defend, which is very difficult to deal with if your Shadowhunter, your TC, or your Wolves are not there. And HawK's going to take some losses, but at least he's not down a full tech when he's taking these losses. He has a tier 3 follow-up. It's going to take a while to get online, but he's got a tier 3 follow-up. Taking some losses, right? Taking some losses, taking some losses. Again, the Archmage loss was quite a big mistake. Shouldn't be understated. That was quite a huge mistake that shouldn't have happened. He should have dispelled the Hex. He should have had the Greater Heal passed over. He should have been able to Town Portal. He should have been able to use the Heal Scroll. His Priest shouldn't have been out of position. There was a lot of mistakes there mechanically from HawK that should not have happened. And that a lot of the time could cost HawK the game, is that slight mistake. Both
attack.
here getting forced to Town Portal, and here losing the Archmage. Those, so far, really, we could say, are probably the biggest mistakes from HawK. Just taking this fight overall, but then the mechanical mistakes both here and here. Those are the big mistakes from HawK so far. Still, though, Rifle's coming out, Paladin on the way. He'll have Inner Fire soon, but he lost more priests than he should have, so he needs to wait to get Inner Fire. And Starbuck uses the advantage again to get a tiny Great Hall, because he's quite ahead. Oops. Paladin's now out, though. Still need Staff and Orbs. There's still a lot of things we need before we're actually fully Tier 3 online. Inner Fire being one of those. Takes another 50 seconds. And now, what do you know? We're getting a little bit of experience on a Paladin. Incredible. We can even get Paladin level 2 for Aura, which is, in a way, a Tier 3 advantage that we get. Get Khadgar's, that sucks, obviously, but that's alright. He gets Endurance Aura, which is the same amount of suck. HawK probably realizes that he's quite a bit behind, because he's probably realizes, sorry, that there's a tiny Great Hall up because of how behind he was. So he needs to either think about counter-expanding or going for a push once his Tier 3 all kicks in. Again, this fight from Starbuck is not necessary. He wanted to go for a run-by into the base. He didn't want to fight here, but this timing would be similar to the timing HawK took over here, where he's fighting right when the Tier 3's kicked in, just as Inner Fire finishes, just as he gets Orb of Fire. So that was a really good speed scroll from Starbuck there. HawK getting +2. He should eventually get +2. His lumber's quite good, which is the nice thing about having rifles in the mid-game, so you don't have to call a ton of militia to creep, and also not going for, say, a very early expansion on Tier 2 or anything, or going for an all-in. A lot of things that helps. So he's got a ton of lumber, so he can actually call the boys and still has enough lumber for probably the rest of the game.
Players' forces are under attack.
And this expansion's mined, it is 1,200, right? So it's 1,000, yeah, 10,000. So this expansion's mined for about 2 minutes now. Note, it costs 600 gold. So Starbuck's gotten about 600 gold out of this expansion, which is why he's 5 supply ahead. Right? And obviously he's 5 supply ahead because of the fight he won at the bottom right earlier. But now we simply see just how much stronger a Tier 3 army with Inner Fire, with soon to be Paladin Aura, with Orb of Fire, is. Bolt Bash, by the way, because our damage comes from the rifles. We don't necessarily need Clap, although it's tempting. Bolting down 1 unit at a time and using the rifles to focus is pretty strong as well. Still not the easiest fight. Definitely a fight we could lose. But as we talked about earlier, with the mistake of the Archmage loss, with the mistake of the Archmage being forced to Town Portal, we probably should lose this game on paper, right? Because we made some big mistakes. But still, this Tier 3 Inner Fire rifle army is very, very strong. And we still have some footmen left over. And of course, Starbuck's not going to be using Hex on footmen at this stage in the game. Hey Kaiser, thanks for the 13 months, dude. Appreciate you. How you doing? Also, I appreciate the LCD sound system you're listening to the other night. Good stuff. And with the sustain of level 2 Aura and Inner Fire and Master Trained Priests, and, you know, even more Auras, we actually win the fight. Still even supply, though. Still a position where we could lose, right? But especially against the high-level Shadowhunter, which is always going to be high-level because they go Shadowhunter second. This Orb of Fire is very good, right? Much better than it usually is against Orc. Because most of the time, you'd be against just a Torn Chief, and there'd be not a lot of healing other than heal scrolls and potions. But the heal wave is a big part of this army all of a sudden. What do you know? We kill the Shadowhunter. Taking some losses still. But we have so much sustain because we have level 2 Aura and we have Tri-Hero. The Paladin is a really good addition. And I just want to point out, you might ask yourself, wouldn't Knights be better? Yes, Knights would be very good here. They, of course, just hard counter the Berserkers. But then I ask the question, how do we really kill the Kodos? If we, instead of having 4 rifles here, if we have 2 Knights, and one of those Knights gets eaten by the Kodo, how do we really kill the Kodo? Yes, we can Stormbolt and maybe Water Elemental focus it down, but having 4 Inner-Fire rifles, well, 2 with Inner-Fire, makes it a lot easier to actually deal with these Kodos. Whereas if we have Knights, not only are they a good target for the Kodos, but also just much harder to kill these. They can just get Speed Scroll away, even if we Stormbolt it. Most likely with a heal wave, it's going to get away. Whereas with a single Stormbolt and all this focusing a Kodo, we pretty much kill it in the 5 seconds that we have with the Stormbolt. Right? So you might be saying Knights would be very good here, but in fact, I think against this sort of army, no matter what, I think rifles are actually just better. It could be debated, though. But, of course, we've already established for other reasons why the rifle army is necessary here. Defend Footman still finding value. HawK's done a really good job of that. Sure, yeah, 3 Knights instead of 2. 1 gets eaten, you have 2. The question, I think, still is there.
Players' forces are under attack.
No reinforced defenses or spiked barricades this time, because again, Starbuck's been making adjustments to HawK going tier 3, to HawK not prioritizing level 3 Archmage. So it's not just HawK here making adjustments. That's why there's no reinforced defenses right now. Level 3 Paladin, kind of one of the best upgrades in the game of a hero, right? Like, would you rather have Dark Ranger level 3 as an undead, or would you rather get Paladin level 3 as a human with Tri-Hero, right?
A player's forces are under attack.
What if Starbuck has Taurens? We'll see that in the next replay. We'll see that in the next replay, and we'll talk about that.
Town is under siege.
And note how long this fight's been going on for. Longer fights are just going to be, by definition, better for the human, because they have priests, and because they have Brilliance Aura. Just by definition, the longer the fights go, the better it is for HawK here. And eventually he breaks the expansion. And he does so now with a 15 supply advantage. Look how strong this army is. And that was with Paladin level 1 when he pushed. Even though HawK was horribly behind after this mistake here, he lost a ton. And the expansion mined for, remember, 2 minutes. And even a minute longer after. This was 2,700 gold out of this expo. HawK was still able to just push with a single heal scroll and a greater heal potion and win the game. Really well done, eh? And it took some micro. It took some resilience. But the army is really what carried him.
Players' forces are under attack.
And Starbuck's gonna try. But GG will be called. And now 1-0 in the series for HawK in the lower bracket of Group B DreamHack Winter Europe. 1-0. So now we've watched 3 games. We've talked about 4. HawK's done 3 different strategies, all making slight adjustments along the way. And although there were some mistakes in this game, this definitely checked all the boxes of what he needed to accomplish. Now, what were the real weaknesses? He was either being at a tech disadvantage because he was staying on Tier 2 and he wasn't able to win on Tier 2. So he solved that by going Tier 3 early. But then he was going Tier 3 too early, and Starbuck was just tiny Great Halling, and there was no damage to be done with the Archmage level 3. So he couldn't really do anything. He couldn't stop the tiny Great Hall. And then he was also getting abused by his Zeppelin because he had not a lot of anti-air. And also Starbuck had just a tiny Great Hall, and he was able to just play pure hit and run because he was 2 bases against 1. And HawK solves all those by just going rifles at Tier 2, delaying the Tier 3 tech, but eventually going for inner fire rifles. Sarati032, thank you for the 7 months. Sarati. He sort of solves all those problems. What he's doing here is he's playing around the power spikes of the strategy. What he's doing here is he's starting to understand the details and nuances of Starbuck's style. When it's strong, when it's weak, what weaknesses it has, when he has the opening to push, when he can commit his footman health, when he's able to creep. That's what HawK's starting to understand, and he's ironing out the details into what was a pretty clean game with some mechanical errors at the least. We're going to talk about this more in replay number 4 after a short break. We'll be back. All right, we're back. We're back. And HawK is starting to figure it out, is he not? What I think is so cool about this is you can really see, although we are kind of, let's say, putting thoughts in HawK's head, because we're not him. We cannot exactly assume why he's making these changes. Maybe he's doing them for completely different reasons. Maybe he's, has no idea what he's doing. He's just doing random things, and this just happened to work, and he doesn't know why. But, still, here we are. Who knows, really? Who knows? Did you watch the old Day 9 Daily in order to get inspiration for your show? Yes, this is directly inspired by the Day 9 Daily. It really is. Directly inspired. Loved that show. Loved it. Didn't even play StarCraft. Still loved it. Although we do more straight analysis than fun days. We could maybe do some fun days, but it's always tough to do. I think it's tougher to do in Warcraft than it is in StarCraft. Alright, so HawK's starting to figure it out. He's starting to figure it out. And he's up 1-0 in the series, in a best of 3. Now, if he wins this map, he's out of his group, and he's into the playoffs. So let's see what happens now. We just watched Northern Isles. Now let's see Concealed Hill. This was the map, remember, in the previous series where HawK went for the immediate Tier 3 tech. Lost a lot of footmen because he was really prioritizing getting level 3 Archmage, remember. He lost 2 footmen in trying to creep the Cobalts and get level 3. And then he tried to pressure at Tier 2, but there was already a Shadowhunter, Spike Barricades, Reinforced Defenses. He ends up losing all the footmen because he's been too aggressive with both his creeping and just trying to pressure the base. Goes Tier 3, his Knights are too late to punish a tiny Great Hall, and then the Zeppelin drop harass seals the deal for Starbuck, and he gets the victory in the series. That's what happened last time on Concealed Hill. Let's see how it plays out this time with HawK's newfound enlightenment. Here we go. Let's watch Todd's point of view. So here's HawK in the bottom left. The spawns are reversed from the last replay. Starbuck in the upper right. So what HawK did in the last game was he crept this, and then he crept this, and then he ran up, and then he tried to solo creep this with footmen while sort of pressuring with the Archmage around here. But then Starbuck found it, and he killed 2 footmen. and put a lot of damage on the Archmage in the process. Of course, what Starbuck did was he just straight harassed and still went into the Shadowhunter. Starbuck's going to do something slightly different this game as well, which might help with HawK's success here. I'll just point that out now. Instead of going for a bestiary this game, Starbuck's going to go for a Tauren Totem. Alright, so just something worth tagging at the beginning. But still, we saw last game, Northern Isles, HawK have success against the bestiary. So, and Tauren Totem could be argued, Spirit Walkers and Taurens, Spirit Link, Disenchant, probably more effective than Kodos against Innerfire Rifles, right? Probably more effective than Raiders against Innerfire Rifles. So maybe Tauren Totem actually better than bestiary. 3 farms, he's going to get the tower again, right? Not taking damage in the early game like we did in the first replay. And we're making good time as well. Look at us go. Incredible. Incredible planning. There's the tower. And Militia gets called. We're going to start creeping. Farseer comes out. He's going to start harassing. 2 burrow tech with headhunters. All standard stuff. We've seen this before. We've done 6 episodes on this matchup. We know what we're looking at, right? We know what we're looking at. HawK has the luxury on this map of actually being able to just sneak out the level 2 with this efficient creep route where he leaves the Militia just for a second. But look, they go back home just in time, and there's an Arcane Tower on the way as well. So maybe we lose a Peasant, but still, much better than we were in the first game in the second game. And what do you know, it's almost like I've seen this replay. HawK's going to lose a Peasant. But in doing so, he gets level 2. Fair trade? I'd say fair trade. And soon the tower's going to be up, and then this sort of wolf harass will no longer disrupt the mining of lumber. And we'll all go home happy, right? Very soon, very soon, very soon. And there we go. These wolves can no longer force Militia to be called, right? They can no longer do this. Now, remember what HawK did on Northern Isles. He ran around. Let's talk about this a bit. He ran around aggressively on the map. So he ran, say for instance, this is whatever. He goes aggressively. He goes forward. Now on this map, it doesn't work out so easily that you can threaten, because you can't threaten to take this creep camp. It's too large. But say HawK goes over here, or he goes over here. Starbuck has to, or he goes here, or here, although this is quite close to his base. Starbuck has to respect the fact that HawK could take these camps for just the cost of a single water elemental when he has the mana, which he has aura for now, which would, he'd take no damage on the footman or the Archmage. So Starbuck has to respect this. And of course, the wolves can no longer harass in the main base. So Starbuck, in a way, has to chase around HawK no matter where he goes, because if HawK goes all the way across the map and just sits here and runs in circles around this, Starbuck has to continuously chase HawK, because HawK can always threaten taking these camps for free. And if Starbuck ever starts to creep, well, HawK can creepjack him. And once he has defend, after the 4th or 5th footman, as he's been doing, he can just, stop the creeping entirely. So Starbuck, in a way, has to chase around HawK. And HawK knows this, and he can just run around. He can just run literally to Starbuck's side of the map, and then just make Starbuck chase him in circles. What does this do? Well, it keeps his footman and his Archmage healthy, because he's just running away. And it also keeps the main base safe entirely from harass. This disallows Starbuck from being able to just run into the base right now with the Headhunters and the Farseer, because if he does that, HawK creeps level 3, and then he just counterattacks before tier 2 finishes, right? So this is how generally it plays out, bar a mistake from either player. Why is Starbuck not just creeping? Well, he could creep back at home. Maybe he could creep this, or he could creep this, or he could creep maybe this as well. But worth noting that HawK would creepjack him if he crept here or here. And if he crept these are so big that a Headhunter would get ensnared and HawK would just creepjack. So HawK is staying close enough that he can stop Starbuck from creeping, but far away enough that Starbuck kind of has to chase him because then he's threatening taking camps on his side.
A player's forces are under attack.
It's almost a gentleman's agreement that we're both just going to run around the map because neither of us can creep, because if we get creep jacked, we're going to lose a lot. And that's pretty much that. But it's good for the human because they don't want to take damage on their footman until defend is finished. So as long as HawK plays clean with good map movement and good footman positioning, he should be ahead in the early game. Again, HawK just running away. Starbuck just chasing. Just running away. Now that's a little bit too much damage to take on the footman. That's just a mechanical mistake. I would also say summoning this water elemental maybe not necessary, but he did so that the footman could go and heal up for a second. And still blacksmith, just like last game. Right, nothing new here. Remember, this stage on Concealed Hill last time, HawK had already crept this and lost 2 footmen, and then crept, I believe it was this, and took even more damage, and then he tried to go in and pressure the main base around Tier 2, which was right now. And he only had 3 footmen left over, he had no mana, he had the same health about, he didn't get anything done. Yeah, I think killing the water elemental there was totally fine for Starbuck. I think it was a trade that HawK made, his mana, giving a little bit of experience, just to heal the footman a slight bit. I think that was just a trade HawK was willing to make. Again, it's an accepted gambit, in a way, the water elemental, you know? It's neither good nor bad for both players. They're just sort of saying, okay, let's play this game. Now this could argue a mistake. Could argue it is a mistake. But less risky because defend is online, of course. But still, you know, loses the footman for it. Pretty sure Starbuck even gets that last hit. Yeah, so, you know, a mistake. He maybe thought that when Starbuck ran past here, he was just going to start creeping himself. Maybe is why he did that. But a mistake, right? Shop, Arcane Sanctum, Mountain King, first Rifleman out, similar to last game. And remember, last game when HawK realized that the Shadowhunter was about to be out, HawK went passive, he crept level 3 Archmage. He allowed Starbuck to creep, but obviously if he didn't allow Starbuck to creep, he would just lose every footman to Hex. Just lose every single one. So there's nothing to be done about this. This is just something that is just on Concealed Hill. Starbuck gets the red camp. He just does. It's unfortunate, but that's veto the map, you know? Veto the map if you don't want that to happen. That's just how it plays out. Mountain King's out now, though. A couple of Rifler out as well.
Player's forces are under attack.
And Tier 3, of course, on the way. For HawK, going to be a little bit delayed because he wants the army that could actually win a fight at this stage in the game. And can actually creep at this stage in the game. Which rifles allow you to do. Now, the first priest should be out already. Okay, it's about to be out. Still, though, look at this army. Really, really strong. He can't use all of his mana to hex the footman if he needs to use it on heal wave. There's also more than just footmen here. So, this timing, we can think of this timing. Look at the Tier 3 tech. This is the same timing, remember, when HawK was forced to Town Portal at the expansion of Starbuck on Northern Isles. This is that timing again. 2 rifles, the first priest on the way, the Mountain King level 1, Archmage level 3. Tier 3 is not yet done, so we have about 1 minute to play with. So this is a good fight from HawK. This is a nice timing. But again, mechanical mistakes can be made. They always can be made. Still, strategically, a good fight. Fumbly Bumbly Butterfingers loses the Mount King. Could have gotten it away. Still, though, triple Water Elemental. Defended Footman. Gonna find some kills. And it's only a level 1 Mountain King, but still, wasn't necessary. No tier 3 tech yet, but soon, once we can afford it. Zeppelin purchased to get away, but obviously, you know, Zeppelin drops aren't going to be too great when the base is open and when we have plenty of rifles. And there's the tier 3 tech now for HawK. HawK realizes, okay, my timing is up. I can no longer do damage, although he really wanted to do some more because he sort of bled in the water. But he's forced to back away, and now he's just got to wait for his tier 3 to be online. So now it's Starbuck's time to do what he wants for the next 2 minutes, right? So both these games, this fight here and the fight at the expansion on Northern Isles, let's say both those fights could have and should have gone a lot better for HawK. The first game he got forced to Town Portal. The second game he lost his Mountain King a little bit unnecessarily. This is a tactic to buy time. HawK probably realizing he's going to have to Town Portal. But what does this do on a map like Concealed Hill? This is a very common tactic on Concealed Hill. The map is so long. Let's look. Here's an arrow key down. Moving about 3 times faster than army would. That's just from main base to expansion, right? From main base to main base. Oh. So, if I force my opponent here, either via a town portal or just running, and then I town portal, I have all this time before my opponent can either creepjack or push my base. How much time is that? Maybe a minute. How much time do we need for our attack? Maybe a minute and 30 seconds. And then our paladin's on the way, then we have to, you know, it's a tactic to buy time. HawK is expecting to have to town portal here. Trying to get that walker, but he won't.
The player's forces are under attack.
Footman again, doing some split pressure at the same time, all just to buy time. HawK doesn't want to, he's not going to all in here, he's not going to fight till the end of the world, but this is all to buy time. And the longer he can stay here, remember, full minute once he town portals that he has to play with. So it's all gravy. Starbuck maybe could have done a better job fully engaging in here. But yeah, there's the town portal. Starbuck probably should have realized I need to get him out of here as early as I can. Nice job with the walkers, though, cleaning up the footmen. Also, nice job saving these. So HawK loses a town portal and 1 rifle, but what does he get in exchange? He evens up the tech, right? Brilliant tactical move there from HawK. And he just calls militia right away, knowing that there's no way he could be creepjacked. He's just going to creep this, and then he's going to creep this, and maybe he can even get away with the shop. This will be level 3 Mountain King, maybe even level 2 Paladin. And look how cool this is. Starbuck immediately, as soon as the town portal's forced, he does what we're talking about. He runs down. Isn't able to get the creepjack here. But say he ran down and pushed the base right now. What do you know? HawK's already done creeping that one big camp. He's very close to level 3 Mountain King.
A player's forces are under attack.
As the tier 3 advantage is coming to fruition. He's going to go for an expansion. Realizing that maybe Starbuck, Tiny Great Hall expanded. Trying to pull the red camp, but Starbuck's going to be here in time. Oh, little mistake. Paladin gets caught out of position. Just an unlucky timing more than anything. Maybe a peasant could have been called, a militia, and sent here. Maybe a farm could have been built there. But he wanted to use them for the expansion. Double Arcane to deal again with the Zeppelin drop potential that killed him in the last series on this map. And there is a Zeppelin, right? But just not really usable because there's so many rifles, so much anti-air. It would just die right away. And Starbuck not wanting to fight, probably going to go back and counter-expand. So we're in 2 base, tier 3, all is even, try-hero. We're both going to get our fountains. Right, it's going to be a relatively even game. With HawK being slightly ahead in gold this time. Paladin's finally back. This time around we do have +2 quite earlier because the game's just gone better for us. This is a mistake from Starbuck, and he in fact forgets to revive it, which is quite a big mistake, but I guess it keeps him below upkeep, I guess. But of course, if he wanted to lose the unit on purpose, he'd probably lose the Berserker, stay below upkeep.
A player's forces are under attack.
And now Paladin's here with Orb. And we have our expansion up. A very comfortable game now for HawK. Very comfortable game. Paladin's even going to get level 2 for that sweet, sweet aura. And the map is almost crept out. Starbuck pushing here. What's he trying to do? Again, gets a nice timing on a rifle. He's buying time for his Tiny Great Hall to pay off. Because, of course, like, if they both run into each other's bases, who do you think's going to do more damage, right? Who's going to do more damage? Obviously, HawK's going to take a lot more damage than an Orc with reinforced burrows. And an Orc that's already in your base. By the way, Taurens, obviously. But for walkers, he's going for Master Taurens, which is better, we already established, than Kodos against Innerfire rifles, so this makes sense from Starbuck.
Players' forces are under attack.
And HawK most certainly has to respect this.
Town is under siege.
Wolves again harassing with double arcane on the way. And probably just a town portal from Starbuck. Should a town portal probably right away. Yeah, AoE 4 is out. I'm pretty sure it's out today, right? Maybe we'll do an AoE 4 TheoryCraft. Who knows? Nice attention to detail with the wolf. Can he get one more? He does. Really nicely done. But again, when our opponent town portals, what does that allow us to do? Well, it allows us to get control of one side of the map at least. Maybe a good choice from Starbuck would have just been to immediately run down here, but then it probably would have been an expansion for expansion trade, which I think would have favored HawK, because his expansions obviously paid off. He's got 1,000 gold, Starbuck's only got 600. And now it's just a battle of who can micro better, who's got the stronger army. And honestly, who's got the stronger army? Probably HawK. Once you get Paladin level 2, once you get Archmage level 4, a lot of the time you're going to have the stronger army, but it still takes some micro. Orb of Fire is just so good, though. It's so good here. Kites away. Worth noting he's going now for Sorceresses to deal with the Taurens. That's an obvious counter to Taurens, getting a couple of Sorceresses, because there's not going to be a ton of disenchant from the walkers. So that's how he reacts to seeing Taurens. When he has the luxury to get them, he gets them. And he just focuses the walkers as much as he can. Ground portal out. Still even supply, though. And HawK doesn't use either heal scroll, which was smart. That would have been an overcommitment to the fight. Single targeting to bait all the heal waves? Yeah, that's a cool point, right? Because heal wave, it bounces between, at level 2, it'll bounce between 4 targets. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, I mean, although he's got Spirit Link, so it's always going to bounce, everything's always going to be damaged, but say everything wasn't Spirit Linked and you only damage 1 unit, the heal wave bounce essentially does nothing, right? It might heal like this Berserker a little bit, but, you know, the heal wave would only heal a single target, which is inefficient. So with the rifles, with the Bolt Bash not going clap, and the Orb of Fire, it just makes the heal wave very, very inefficient. Because if it doesn't bounce, it's not as though that heal all goes to the same unit, it just doesn't heal the other units it would have. I think if it got to a point where there was a lot of Taurens, HawK would get a second Sanctum up and go into many more casters, or... let's not forget, if there was a lot of Taurens, he completely cut Berserker production and just went for, say, two Totem Taurens. We can always go Griffins, right? We have enough lumber for a Griffin Aviary. We have enough lumber for a Shredder and a Griffin Aviary, even. We can just go Griffins if we really need to. So that's why we kind of need a balance if we're Starbuck. We need the Taurens to deal with the rifles, but we need the Berserkers from stopping our opponent from just going into Taurens. Or going into Griffins, rather. HawK actively dispel Spirit Link. It's tough because he's got so limited priests to actively get rid of the Spirit Link. But like here would be a good clump to dispel. And if he ever focuses the Tauren Chieftain, I imagine he'll try to get rid of the Link. But it's tough because Starbuck is actively recasting it, right? But yeah, like for instance, when he goes for a Stormbolt on the TC, I mean, he could probably dispel the Spirit Link. But it's not like it's bad to just focus one target when there is Spirit Link, because it essentially works like a weird clap in a way. Because it's damaging everything, and the damage doesn't disappear, just 50% of it goes onto the rest of the army, so yeah, it works out. Starbuck has better levels and the fight doesn't seem close. This army's very good from HawK. He's got good upgrades, he's got good hero levels, level 2 aura, worth noting, very important, because the sustain on the priests, on your heroes, is what's important. Yeah, it's a really good army, even against what should be the hard counter of Taurens. Paladins are about to be level 3. And you know, even if the Taurens are getting revived, we're still getting experience, and this Tri-Hero is very good. Say what you will about Human, the Tri-Hero is really good. As is Orc's Tri-Hero, but, you know, better with a Blade Master than a Farseer, right? And better with a high-level Tauren Chieftain over a high-level Shadow Hunter, even though they're the same right now. They have 2 barracks or 1? You mean HawK. He's only got 1 barracks. He's just had this the whole game just producing. Sometimes we'll see players like Kiwikaki with Orc get 2 barracks for lots of production, but not often Starbuck. And again, look at the supply differential. Even though the expansion is mining, we can send a Water Elemental over there. And HawK seems to have found, maybe not a solution, but a very good strategy against the style of Starbuck. And, like, look at the mana on the Paladin. Level 2 Holy Light, absolutely ridiculous. So much sustain after all this fighting. HawK still has a heal scroll. Don't lose that rifle. And just a very, very long fight. Remembering that the longer the fight goes, the more it will favor HawK. Because he's got priests and Brilliance Aura. GG well played is called. And you know what? It was well played. It was well played. That was a good game from HawK. So there we see. Over 5 maps, 2 series, 1 tournament, 1 group. HawK makes 3, 4, slowly but surely makes adjustments. And eventually works his way up to this strategy, which still maybe has some flaws, I think, from HawK's point of view. Some of the timings, maybe. Obviously, creeping that crab and losing the footman in the early game was bad. Losing the Mountain King was bad, although the fight was not. Still some slight errors from HawK, but 2-0. In fact, I believe the first 2-0 he's ever gotten against Starbuck. Let me look it up. Because maybe I'm making all this up. Let's see their stats between each other. I could entirely be wrong. Could entirely be wrong. One sec, I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. So here are their stats. So he won when Starbuck played Undead, which was a while ago. Then Starbuck won, Starbuck won, Starbuck won. And then this was the series that HawK won. And what do you know? They played 4 days ago. Ooh, HawK won again. Are there replays for this? No, we can't see the replays or the hero choices. I would have liked to see the hero choices. But this is the series we just watched. And this was the series in the other tournament. Noting that this map, Autumn Leaves, that's the map he tried the Knights on. Right? So the narrative actually works. Very cool. I was worried that it wasn't because I didn't actually check their stats. So that is how HawK found a very nice solution to a very nice strategy, which is absolutely still viable for Starbuck. The thing that I think Starbuck may have to do now is mix in more standard play, right? Maybe he should start playing both Farseer, Torn Chieftain, Tier 2 expansion. Look at an updated look at Orc versus Human, if you're wondering what that strategy is. We did a whole episode on that. And switch between this style that he's doing now, the Shadowhunter second style, and that style. Between the two of them, try to mix it up, try to throw HawK off. But if he continues to, I won't say stubbornly, but maybe one-dimensionally doing the same strat against HawK, HawK's only going to improve more and more and more at countering this, as we see how rapidly he improved just between losing one series and then winning the next, and then winning the next one after that. I would really like to see, for this series, what heroes they played. Because I think maybe like Starbuck did Farseer Torn Chieftain in one game, and then he did Shadowhunter in the 2 games, and HawK won. Or maybe he did like Shadowhunter game 1 and lost, and then went TC the last 2 games, and HawK managed to win one of them. It's too bad. It's too bad. I wish I could have seen NWC3. I wonder if I can find that, actually. I'm wondering now. Let's see. Give me a sec here. I'm looking. Okay, I found the match. But it doesn't say the heroes. Yeah, it doesn't say the heroes. Yeah, I don't know. Very curious. But I guess it's always good to leave you guys on a cliffhanger, right? So that's the saga of HawK against Starbuck. HawK's rise to success now. It might not continue, but for now he seems to have a half-decent solution to it. And I think I wonder who HawK spoke to. I wonder if he just did it all on his own and just analyzed the replays, if he had someone help him. Because, he really quickly had a good grasp on what to do. Quite nice indeed. And that's that. Are there any questions before we finish up for the day? I know it's a little bit of a shorter episode. We only it's been about an hour and 45 minutes, but I do have to go in about 15 minutes. But if you guys have any questions, happy to answer them. Next week will be Orc day. Maybe we'll watch some Lin replays. Hey, that could be fun. Watch some Lin replays. You guys want to do that? I know I do. Some Lin replays. And then obviously on November 11th, that'll be community replay review. So make sure to start submitting your replays. You might be asking, where can you submit the replays? You can submit them to Carson at backtowarcraft.com. I've seen every submission that's been sent so far, so don't fear if you sent one in and I haven't responded to you. Or you can go to the discord.backtowarcraft.com, and then you can join the TheoryCraft channel. Woo! Orc don't need a day, they need a minute to kill everything. True. How can I respond to orcs if I don't know if it's TC or Shadowhunter second style? Good question. There's actually a tell. There's a tell, at least at the top level. It's always hard with, I don't know what skill you are, Mugs. I don't know what your MMR is. But let's say at lower level, even like say below Grandmaster level, even Master level, it's hard to know exactly what your opponent's doing based on scouting information because sometimes people just do random things, right? Especially orcs. I'm an orc player. We just do random stuff. You never really know. Yeah, so you might have players that sometimes fast tech into 2 bestiary wind riders, and it's hard to tell. But I will tell you, at the top level, there's these 2 styles I've been pointing out. The Farseer Tauren Chieftain Tier 2 expansion, and then the Farseer Mass Headhunter Shadowhunter second in a Tier 3 tech. The tell between these 2 strategies is if they're going to go Farseer Tauren Chieftain with a Tier 2 Expo, the orc will go 4 headhunters, and then they'll build a grunt to deal with the defended footmen. So if you see them stop at 4 headhunters and then transition into grunts, typically they're going to stay on tier 2 and they're going to go for an expansion. If you see them build more than 4 headhunters, most typically 6, 7 headhunters in the early game, most of the time they're going to go tier 3 tech behind that. So you need to get a count of the amount of headhunters, and you also need to see, do they build a grunt before they hit tier 2? The most typical timing for the grunt to come out from the orc will be when your defend finishes. So you go for either 4 or 5 footmen, then get your defend. If the orc has a grunt by that timing, it'll be TC second, at least at the top level. At least at the top level. So there's a little bit of a tell for it, but who knows? Maybe people will go 8 headhunters and then still go into a bestiary at tier 2, right? And of course, Starbuck here also, he was going immediately for tier 3. So if you go and scout his base and you see that he's on tier 2 building a bestiary and a spirit lodge, that's also another big tell. Because he was going straight tier 3, and then after teching, he was either getting his bestiary or his Tauren totem. Is Remo strictly German cast now? Nope. Nope. They just had a lot of ESL Meisterschaft recently. But he'll be with us this weekend for War 3 Champions, which is all English on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm pretty sure he'll be back to ESL Cup on Mondays as well. Yeah, ESL Meisterschaft is the only time they cast in German, as far as I know, unless I think Neo's the only one that does Rocket Beans, which is on another channel. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's 3 of us casting, right? So it's hard for us all to always have something to cover, right? Like there's some weeks I only cast, like this week, for instance. Oh, I guess I'm doing War 3 Champions, so I'm doing 4 casts this week. But, some weeks I'll only do, like, this show and maybe one other tournament. Some weeks I'll do, like, 5, right? But it all depends on the schedule, because we're always splitting it between 3 people, right? Have any idea how to deal with the tier 3 priest paladin style as orcs? Well, obviously, you could just go TC second and avoid it altogether. And then you'd be in a tier 2 game trying to defend your expansion. But I don't think the way that Starbuck played was bad against this. I think it just came down to, maybe execution in fights, maybe being a little bit more lame. I think playing more hit and run is nice. Not with the Zeppelin, because we established that doesn't really work against the rifles, because you just lose the Zeppelin. But, playing a little bit more lame, hit and run, killing peasants, town portaling out, speed scrolling away, stuff like that. Being a little bit more lame-o. Probably a good way to respond to it, but you can avoid it altogether. The orc player, you have to remember, is the one dictating the game. If you go tier 3, the human's going to go tier 3. If you stay tier 2, the human's most likely going to either counter expand or try to push your expansion to the end of the world. Sometimes the human is going to go mass griffins, which is going to throw you through a loop. But a lot of the time, at least tier 2 stuff, the orc is dictating that. So it's really up to you to do it, you know. Now, whether the human goes for early level 3 Archmage or not, that's kind of up to them. And you have to react to that. But was Warcraft 4 coming out? Can't say I know. Can't say I know. All right. We did it, guys. We did it. Appreciate you guys watching. Shout out to CORSAIR, the sponsor of the stream. You can use the coupon code BACK2WARCRAFT for 10% off at checkout. That's !CORSAIR in the chat. You can also check out the War 3 Champions match arena at !W3C Finals, which is where you can contribute to the prize pool for War 3 Champions, which is coming up this Saturday and Sunday. You can find all the information on when tournaments are back2warcraft.com. And also shout out to our patrons, !Patreon as well in the chat. I know it's a lot of commands, but you know, shout out to our patrons. Appreciate you guys. The 500-euro Golden Goat patron, Kanabi Quakes, the 50-euro Midas tier patrons, Toxie, Dondalare, Grinchy1, Jgats, N Padroot, Scription, Circado, and Teggy, and the 25-euro Profit tier patrons, Armin VB, Burning Blades, and KMS3D. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thank you, Peanut Butter Pancakes, doing all the commands. There's a whole lot in there. But essentially, we got CORSAIR, we got our patron, and War 3 Champions Finals. All right, those are the three. Those are the three. They're also in the stream title. Make sure to go check those links out. And now, I'm going to raid Todd. All right, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to raid Todd. Me and Todd are doing a stream together today on twitch.tv/Norton Gaming. We're going to be doing a little review of the ESL circuit, so the tournament that we were just covering today. Do a little bit of review of that. We're going to talk about Warcraft a bit, and then we're going to play some games together. We're going to play some 2v2 together. We might watch each other play some 1v1. So that's going to be on twitch.tv/Norton Gaming in 70 minutes. But I'm going to raid Todd, and then he's going to raid the Norton Gaming channel. So if you just stick around on Todd's channel when I raid him, he'll take you there afterwards. And we'll be there in 70 minutes. In 70 minutes. We're just going to chill out. We're going to talk about DreamHack and stuff. And then we're going to play some 2v2 or something together, all right? So that'll be happening in about an hour. A lot of raiding. You don't play Orc, do you? I, in fact, do play Orc. All right. Appreciate you guys. Hope you didn't mind. It was a little bit of a rushed episode, but we got our 2 hours in. And we'll see you, I'll see you in an hour, or I'll see you for War 3 Champions on Saturday, or I'll see you next week for Orc Day. Appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend. If not, bye-bye.